Hey guys, welcome to Sleep Talks. This is a channel for those who want to get their sleep back, and my name is Alina. I'm a sleep coach, and I'm going to make a Q&A video where I answer some of the questions that I received from my subscribers, and I hope that you will find my answers to these questions helpful as well, because I know that insomnia recovery journey, it can feel very individual. It can feel very frightening and like isolating, but in reality, when you take many people and you see what kind of questions they ask, what kind of experience they go through, you realize that insomnia is not really that unique thing. So by answering this question that I receive from people, I hope that more people who are also go through the same struggles can find something useful for themselves as well. I have today 5 people who ask questions, and I'm going to answer them one by one. And if you want to kind of skip to different questions, then I will provide time codes where you can easily do that. Because I assume the video is going to be rather long, but I hope it will be interesting and useful for those of you who are listening to this right now. Before I begin, as always, I want to say that I'm not a doctor or any other professional, so this is not a medical or any other professional advice, just sharing my general thoughts and ideas, which I hope you will find useful. The first person who is asking the question is Colin, and Colin messaged me this comment through my newsletter, which I publish every week, so I encourage you to subscribe to that. I will provide link in the description. So the question was under the newsletter, where I was talking about like sleepiness as a feeling and whether it really affects our chances to fall asleep. So the comment goes like this: I thought that you should only go to bed when sleepy. If you do become awake when you get into bed, it's normally due to conditioned arousal, ? So here basically Colin asks that the moment when you feel, let's say you feel like you're ready to go to bed, you probably feel sleepy, and then you go to bed and then find yourself awake and hyper aroused. And partially, yes, I believe that it's also kind of like conditioned arousal. So that means that certain objects, certain atmosphere triggers some fear response in ourselves. For example, going to bed, when bed associates with some like struggles, with a lot of fighting with our sleep and frustration, that can kind of evoke those memories of yourself struggling, which can increase your hyper arousal and make you less sleepy. But then there is like more things that contribute to this kind of feeling awake, and I like how Coach Daniel from the Sleep Coach School describes it as a Houdini effect. It's basically the phenomena where you suddenly feel awake after feeling very sleepy. So for those who are struggling with their sleep, this might be very confusing, because we think that, okay, we struggle with our sleep, we feel like we need sleep. We might feel even like really sleepy, and the moment when we go to bed we feel suddenly super awake, and this can make one feel very abnormal, like something is not right. But in reality, if you take this particular not situation, but the thing that happens, this kind of like a sudden wakefulness, and put it in different condition, in different, let's say, context, suddenly it doesn't seem so strange. So let me give you an example. Imagine you don't have insomnia or you don't have any sleep problems, and you go to bed and you're very sleepy, you start drifting off, like you might have like some thoughts coming and going, and then you remember that you forgot to send some super important document, or you forgot to submit your assignment to school, or anything. So something that you forgot to do, and it's really important. In that moment when you realize that, I'm pretty sure that you're not going to be sleeping anytime soon, because in that particular moment, it seems like the brain detected, okay, there is a threat, let's say, to my career, there's a threat to my, study, like to my success at school and so on. And naturally, it makes us feel worried. And this makes us lose sleep. So we begin we have a lot of energy, and we probably get up and start fixing our problem. And in this kind of situation, it feels logical that we suddenly lose that sleepiness. But when it comes to insomnia, we feel like, okay, this wakefulness came out of nowhere. But I believe that part of that kind of weird experience comes from this experience where the brain detects there is something really important that has to be solved right now, which is, let's say, preventing wakefulness from happening, or not doing anything wrong so that we could sleep. This can trigger the same effect where the brain simply feels like it's too dangerous to sleep right now because there is a problem that needs to be solved. Paradoxically, this problem relates to sleep itself. So this is why we might not always see the link here. But in reality, once we demystify this kind of experience and see that it is completely normal, that once we have this kind of fear of not sleeping, the brain sometimes might get kind of triggered this mode where we feel like, okay, now this problem has to be solved somehow, and we become unintentionally hyper aroused and less sleepy. I just want you to know that this kind of experience, feeling really awake after time of feeling sleepy, that's okay during insomnia recovery. With time, the more the less hyper arousal you get regarding your sleep, you will experience less this kind of things. Okay, the next question is from Molly Reed. Hey Alina, I find I'm not thinking about anything, but I still can't sleep or sleep so lightly. I feel like a zombie, lol. Even sleeping meds don't always work. Do you think something is wrong with me? My mind is blank, tired, but not sleepy. I feel like zombie, never have no idea I'm awake or asleep. Is it part of the journey? Been happening for 5-ish months. Please help, thank you. Okay, thanks Molly for asking this question. And I see here like a very common thinking pattern where a person kind of makes connection where they think that, okay, so during insomnia I have, let's say, I do a lot of efforts, I think about sleep nonstop, and therefore I need to get rid of that kind of like behavior and thinking so that I can sleep. In theory it is correct, but in practice that's a little bit trickier than that, because there is no actual connection between, let's say, having no thoughts about sleep, or no thoughts, no worries about sleep, and the actual sleep itself. Because the true nature of sleep is that nothing can produce sleep, meaning that no special condition, no special lack of thoughts or anything is going to directly make you sleep. And oftentimes people get into this kind of trap, including myself. I've been in that trap for many times, when I thought like that, okay, I'm not thinking about sleep, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I expect that I will have proper sleep. But when that doesn't happen, that makes us feel like, okay, there's something wrong with us, I'm somehow different. In reality, that's not, it's not really an unusual situation, because in this situation, let's say Molly, I see that she put sleep as the goal, meaning that she creates like she tries to create perfect conditions for sleep. Let's say having no thoughts around sleep, having no sleep efforts, which is great in like that. You don't think about it, but when you at the same time you also have sleep as a goal, this is when things become tricky, because sleep can never be the goal. Sleep is always a byproduct or side effect of not even trying to fix sleep or affect it in any way. So I would say that it's really helpful to just always keep an eye whether you what are your what are your expectations of things that happen to you. Let's say if you if you find that you're doing everything right and so on, and at the same time you expect that this particular condition or thing that you're doing currently is going to impact your sleep, this is where the tricky part begins. This is what usually the reason why you're not getting the outcome that you want, because there is this expectation that this perfect conditions has to lead to peaceful sleep. Well, in reality, sleep will happen on its own terms, and we don't have access to when it happens, how it happens. It just happens, right? And sometimes, when we feel more hyper-aroused, sleep might be a bit more difficult, but it's not always the case that when we have no thoughts, that guarantees a good sleep. Oftentimes, we find ourselves in very, bizarre situations where, let's say, we were super anxious, we were thinking about sleep, and yet sleep happened, while on the opposite days, like when we don't think, when we don't really feel anxious, we don't sleep. So I just want to kind of like break that connection between those two things, which are not really connected with sleep itself. Okay. Then she writes, I feel like a zombie, even sleeping meds don't always work. Well, sleeping meds, they don't, like, nothing really works on the process of falling asleep, because, it is always done by our body, and usually why, sleeping aids tend to work, in air quotes, is that, of course, some of them can provide sedating effect, but the most important part of it is that people use it as some sort of like, okay, that's my ultimate solution. I don't have any other, ideas how to help myself. So I just take the pill and I did everything I could. And this kind of idea that, okay, I took care of myself and just let the pill take care of the rest. Paradoxically, this kind of absence of effort is what allows sleep to happen smoothly. So it gives us a feeling that, yes, the pill worked itself, but in reality that was this kind of absence of trying any further is what allowed sleep to happen naturally, plus maybe some partial sedating effect from the pill, but so far there is nothing that can actually initiate this process of falling asleep directly. Okay, I feel like zombie, never have idea if I'm awake or asleep. And this is actually interesting, and very common at the same time, because during insomnia, people can get in this kind of like situation where sleep doesn't feel like sleep, so you are not really sure whether you're asleep or you're awake. And usually in this kind of situation, I had a rule of thumb for myself, is that when I'm not sure whether I slept or not, I always attributed it to, yes, I slept. And I was not even trying to solve it any further, because in reality, most probably, if you are not sure, a really high chance that you were sleeping at that time. So and usually it's kind of like accompanies with this feeling that time goes faster, or you don't really remember the details of the night when you wake up in the morning, or you just get up in the morning and you cannot really remember the whole night, but it feels like you were not sleeping. You don't feel that grogginess maybe that usually comes after sleeping, like deeper. But usually this kind of like uncertainty is a sign that you are getting the sleep, the body was getting the sleep it needed. So one way could be that we can try to figure out, like, well, was I sleeping really or not, which can spend our energy and time on something that already happened, like night is in the past. Or we can just consider it as, if I'm not sure whether I slept, that means that I slept, and just leave it as that. So two kind of approaches, and I believe the second one leads to more peace and letting go of controlling or overthinking sleep. Okay, the next question is from Peace. I began my recovery journey 5 months ago. I was planning to postpone my wedding till summer 2023. I thought that by that time my insomnia would have ended. But as I learned more and more, I discovered that I shouldn't plan my life around insomnia. So I scheduled my wedding for this summer, although I haven't left the fear of not sleeping yet. I still have bad nights, and the pressure to be able to handle everything is here. Do you think that I acted right? This decision will speed up the recovery up. Will speed the recovery up? Question mark. I love this question because it has so many these kind of like levels where there's a lot to say about this. So the first, like, I just want to say that here the Peace actually acknowledges the fact that before she started like learning about insomnia, she was trying to kind of like postpone the wedding or change her life plans so that it would so that she could overcome like insomnia, meaning that okay, first I will fix my sleep and then I can plan my wedding. And here you can see that that doing this way assumes that there is certain a deadline you put on yourself in order in terms of like sleep recovery, which by default means the moment when we set deadline for our recovery, when we say okay, I need to get this fixed by this day, which that means that inevitably this kind of like this day will be, or deadline will be postponed, because it will create performance anxiety. We will try harder to make it on time, so it's not going to help us in the long run. So I'm really glad that Peace here kind of like understands this. Then she writes like, yeah, I discovered that I shouldn't plan my life around insomnia, and that's so true, because we often think that in order to live normal life we need to first fix our sleep, while in reality that's the other way around. We cannot fix sleep unless we basically stop allowing insomnia to rule our lives. So in this case, choosing life over insomnia is a much better strategy than giving yourself conditions. Okay, first I do, I fix my sleep and then I do other stuff, because usually the process of recovery and things that you want to have in your life, they can easily happen parallelly. So you can be on the path of recovery and at the same time live your life. In fact, this is one of the pillars that help you strengthen your help you, I would say, to get out of that paradox, get out of that vicious cycle. And I'm really glad that Peace actually chose to not to postpone her wedding anymore. So she kind of like set it for this year, and acknowledging that yes, there is still fear. It is super helpful indeed. So really glad this decision. But then there is interesting part is this last question, where she asks, this decision will speed the recovery up. And this is again, we go back to the rabbit hole a little bit, because you see how in the beginning I said that once we set certain deadline on our recovery, this is when we are going to postpone this recovery even further. So when we try to estimate how long this recovery lasts, if we do certain thing, or we try to kind of like a little bit tweak it or hack it, this recovery process, this is where things get really, really sticky and tricky. So I find it really helpful to be aware of this mind's attempt to control sleep. And I feel that this particular question at the end is actually an attempt to control the process of recovery. While recovery will happen on its own once we start living our life as doing things that matter, while being open to experience whatever happens, keep educating yourself in regards to insomnia, being kind to yourself, then sleep will be the byproduct of that, but not vice versa. So just maybe something that you can check yourself, like when you have certain question about your recovery, think about this: who is asking this question? Always kind of be mindful that the question that you have, what part of you was asking this question. If it's that part that is craving control over sleep, that tries to somehow manipulate it, tries to, speed up the process. That's usually that part that got you in this situation in the first place. So just be mindful here, and in general I do think this is like a really good approach where you choose your life and you choose yourself in the first place, and then sleep follows that kind of meaningful life, meaningful decisions. So yeah, I hope that was useful. Gkiama asks, "Hi Alina, this makes so much sense, exploring different learning avenues." This was a comment under the video that I posted recently. I think it was about that when you're on your recovery journey, that you are not obliged to follow only one teaching. It is okay to jump from teachings, come back or explore something else. It's really okay if you just like follow this kind of curiosity and use multiple sources in order to put together your perfect mix of understanding and knowledge on how to deal with insomnia. So yeah, I've experienced this things clicking a few times, only to have it disappear after I experience a bad night or just a short period of good sleep, 1-2 weeks. This is then frustrates me and feel that I'm regressing instead of progressing. Any advice? Well, I just want to say that this kind of situation, when things click at some point and then we have this clarity, we understand what to do, we understand, we see things for what they are, and then this clarity goes away, and then we find ourselves again in this kind of like struggle. We feel anxious, we try like to do we try to get rid of it, we try to fall asleep, and so on and so on. And then the clarity might come back again and disappear again. So I just want to say that this kind of situation where things are kind of like bumpy is completely normal. This is what the whole concept of speed bumps is about, because like eventually on our path we are going to have this speed bump moments. So the fact that you that you feel frustrated about it is completely understandable, because when we feel like things are getting better and then we have this clarity and then we lose it, it is not because we did something wrong, or we somehow undermined our progress or regressed in any way. It is just the way how the brain works. At some point it just comes up with a new idea to keep you safe, and then it just takes time. Once again the brain sees that there is nothing threatening you, and it just again sees clarity. So and I usually find that imagine the situation like there is a fog. Let's say the moment when you lose this clarity is like you are in a fog, and this fog is basically gives you this kind of like frustration, a lot of struggle. You feel frightened to look into this fog to see what is in there, and usually you kind of like start run away from that fog. You just escape it, which is not the not a good strategy in the long run. But once you are willing to face this kind of embrace this fog, be in this state where you just, yes, I don't have clarity right now, and I know it might take some time until this clarity appears, but I'm ready to be here for myself, face my difficult emotions, difficult thoughts while taking care of myself, and eventually this leads to that fog kind of clearing out, and this moment of clarity comes back. And the more this kind of iterations you go through, like meaning going through those speed bumps, the longer the periods of time when you have this clarity, and the shorter those periods are when you lose this clarity. So it's kind of like it's never just one moment where you just feel like, okay, now I have this clarity, and then it's for forever. Maybe such cases exist, but for me it was not like this. For me it was like the periods of clarity were getting longer, then sometimes it was like again a bit bumpy, and then again longer. So this is how the usual process of recovery goes. So I hope this brings you a little bit more perspective on this question. Okay, the last question is from Andrew. Alina, I recently got better sleep after watching one of your videos. In a nutshell, I needed to put down 8-9 hours of healthy sleep in a pedestal, which I did, and I got better during the past week. Just to give you like context here, Andrew refers to the video about celebrating good nights, because oftentimes once we sleep better, we kind of like get into this mode where we celebrate it, or we feel like extremely happy, and we try to kind of capture that or maintain this result, which gets us in a tricky situation that we again go back with back in the rabbit hole, and with a lot of frustration. So in a way that it looks like this, that the moment when you feel happy or celebratory on the good nights, that means that the amplitude like of when you will have less sleep will become bigger. So that means the frustration will be stronger once sleep once the speed bump starts, for example. So one of the ways how we can do is that to a little bit flatten this kind of like curve, is that to lower a bit this kind of celebratory reaction to good nights, so that the difference between good nights and bad nights would not be that big. And that means that we will stop reacting to in any particular way to good nights, but in the same way we stop reacting to nights when we sleep less, which is key to basically breaking the cycle, because then we are not chasing any certain outcome, and sleep just starts happening because there is nothing that stands in the way. There's no problem solving of that of sleep. So yeah, so that was the comment on this video. So I continue the reading. But today I slept 8 hours uninterruptedly, which is good because I had 5 hours in the past only. But I woke up and still felt really, really tired. It made me think, oh, what did I do wrong the night before? I ate a big meal close to bedtime, plus I didn't take my valerian root capsule. I've been taking them for 1 week straight. And now I feel like I'm in the rabbit hole of analyzing everything. I know I need to stop that and just move on, but what do you think about eating a large meal close to bedtime and how it affects sleep? Is it all in my head, or is there actually a physical aspect that's affecting my sleep? FYI, I used to never had any sleeping problems at all in regards to consumption, like coffee, alcohol, food, etc. But now it seems that my body is hypersensitive to these substances and I need to watch out for everything. I appreciate your videos, Alina. They're very, very helpful and calming. Thanks a lot, Andrew. And there are a lot of things that you mentioned, and they're really good topics. So the first one I want to kind of touch is that's kind of the idea that 8 hours of sleep are supposed to make us feel good. Well, in reality, it's just kind of like a belief around sleep, which can be holding us back, because here Andrew basically assumes that 8 hours are supposed to give you enough energy, and then if it didn't give you enough energy, then there should be some reason for that lack of energy, let's say. And one of these kind of ideas maybe that I had a meal close to bedtime. And I would say that, first of all, there are so many things that can affect sleep in a way that, if you drink double espresso at 10 p.m, I would say you might feel certain, like heightened energy level, which is totally understandable. And maybe also eating some heavy meal, and when it doesn't really sit with you, it might kind of like impact in certain way, but not in a way how insomnia does. Insomnia is this fear around not getting enough sleep. So that means that it might not necessarily be the actual thing, like let's say you ate something which can impact. Maybe the difference could be, I don't know, let's say several minutes of less sleep or something like that. But when we are also like accompanied with this kind of thoughts and fears, like, oh my God, was that the meal that impact my sleep? How can I change that, and so on. So there's this kind of like fearful reaction to that. So, and that reaction is what actually contributes to insomnia itself, not the actual things, because sleep disruption can happen. It's pretty ordinary in literally any person on the planet experience from time to time sleeplessness for whatever reason. So I like to use here, common sense approach is that, okay, maybe, if something that, you know, obviously can disrupt your sleep, like let's say if you drink like coffee, double espresso right before your bed, maybe it's not the best idea. But again, it doesn't mean that you will not sleep for whole week or something like that, because coffee pretty quickly gets out of your system. So that's the objectively, it's not going to impact your, you know, your sleep in this kind of long term. So but here is interesting, what I see this one of the thinking pattern is that the idea that 8 hours are supposed to give us like refreshing sleep. It could be the case, like, you know, consistently, but there might be a night or two in life of any person, even the ones who don't have insomnia, where they slept kind of, you know, enough hours wise, but then they don't feel great. And this is not always an insomnia thing. Sometimes it's just, you know, just how things are, and not everything we can fully understand or track the reason behind it. So in a way, this kind of chase for what went wrong, why my sleep, or why I don't feel good after 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, it can set us down the rabbit hole. But sometimes just simply knowing that even people without insomnia, sometimes they might not have the best day or the best mood or the best energy level, even if they slept like, you know, perfect length or whatever, you know, they have great nights. So just kind of disconnect this, like how we feel during the day or how the day goes, and the night itself. Sometimes there is not so much connection between those two things. And another thing is that another explanation that could be here is that, you know, during insomnia we feel a lot of hyperarousal, and hyperarousal tends to mask our tiredness, masks our sleep drive. So to me, sometimes when we feel like, you know, a person who deals with insomnia, they start sleeping more, but then they find themselves like they're more tired actually, and they cannot figure out why that is. And to me, usually that's a sign that hyperarousal is dropping, meaning that certain like tiredness gets uncovered, and it's completely normal that the body is like, you know, kind of readjust itself. Like for some time it might happen. So when we don't really focus too much on getting rid of that tiredness, but rather, you know, use common sense here. If we are tired, provide a certain level of comfort here for yourself, and just, you know, be kind to yourself, not pushy, and, you know, not try to change that feeling with force, or think like whether you did something wrong, but simply, you know, treat yourself with self-care, and usually, you know, the body will kind of like readjust to that. So that's not this kind of like emotional fatigue, I usually call it, usually a sign that there was some fighting was going on. But once we learn to let go, once there is no more fight with sleep, then eventually that kind of fatigue during the day, it kind of like fades away with time. Yeah, so this was all. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you guys had some moments of clarity maybe during this video. I would really like if you subscribe to this channel, write comments what you think about this video, and if you want to support this channel, you can consider joining me on Patreon, just like did other people who are subscribed, and to whom I'm very thankful, because they made these and other episodes possible. So thanks to my Patreon supporters, and I will see you soon. Bye!